Welcome back to the show. This is JD and Riley here on Debatable, and we've got a couple unconventional topics here on this week's show, but we'll get right into some of the more tech-related items, starting off with Microsoft. And I feel like this has been a long time coming. Would you say that'd be the same for you, Riley?
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously, I have my own thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours, actually.
Well, Microsoft is killing Cortana, so I really am not surprised by this. I'm kind of actually more surprised it hasn't happened sooner, just because I feel like they were at the bottom of the barrel.
Pretty much, yeah.
I felt like Google obviously was in the lead, and its closest competitor was, I would probably say, Siri. I know a lot of people like to throw Bixby in there, but I feel like even though Siri wasn't as proficient, I think it's because it had a wider following. So in either case,
I was just going to say, in terms of like maybe the closeness of Siri and Cortana, I don't know. I feel like Siri has dominated a lot of the voice command type stuff in the last at least 8 years for the most part. And I think putting that close to Cortana, maybe a bit of a stretch there. But
well, I think Microsoft's biggest loss is when they pulled out of the mobile market. So that's really where I feel like Cortana truly died. I think they just kept it along because it was just nice to have an assistant on a PC, but I don't really think it made that much of a difference. So
right, yeah.
But it's all in favor of pursuing AI and trying to go in that direction, and I feel like it's a common direction for almost every company out there, actually.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
I can't say I blame Microsoft for doing that.
No.
I can blame them because Cortana wasn't ever really great, and I feel like that's still on them. However, with the advancement of AI, I think that's the right direction to head into. So
yeah, I agree with you right there. I can't even remember the last time I actually even used Cortana. Because I think every time I've started up, like when I've gotten a new laptop the last few years, I was like 2 times, I think. And even when I restarted it, I never, ever enabled Cortana just because there wasn't any, generally speaking, there wasn't really any use for it, because when I'm researching something or looking up something, I usually just type it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was probably its prime maybe 6-7 years ago, but maybe a bit before then. But as of right now, most people probably don't hardly even use it at all. So
well, I think it's also, I don't think they ever actually used a shortcut for it. Obviously it was on the toolbar and stuff like that, but in theory you could activate it the same way you activate Siri, like maybe holding down the start button on your keyboard. But it was never anything where you could just, go in and get it. So, and it was just easier to just use your keyboard and start typing and searching stuff. And I think the habitual side of it is that's what people normally do. They open up a browser, they start searching, or they do just, hit the start button and then search from there. But in either case, it just never really took off on the PC side of things. At least that's what I feel like. And so I'll reiterate one more time. I kind of feel like it was already dead. It was just waiting for the official announcement from Microsoft. So
it's true.
But then on the flip side, we've got Apple, who's starting their own internal Apple GPT, as they call it. Mm-hmm. And it kind of begs the question, just to speculate. I don't think there's actually any true validity to this, but it's worth at least throwing it out there just in case. Hey, who knows? But with that internal start of Apple GPT, do you think they'll ever actually take the axe to Siri, or do you think it would be worth it to take Siri out of the mix in favor of something more advanced?
See, I think because Siri is so well renowned in our world today, because a good portion of the population has an iPhone, I think it'd be good to combine. And I think this is what Apple had been talking about for some time, is actually sort of implementing AI into Siri. Yeah. So I don't really think they should do that. I think that's when Microsoft needed to. Apple does not. That's my kind of thoughts about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And here's the thing, and I get what you're saying. I get that Siri did do some things right.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, I do feel like they definitely felt, I mean, obviously they're pretty much the first one in the mobile market to have, that assistant
right
on your phone. But ever since Google Assistant came out, it kind of just quickly fell behind and they've never really caught up. So, but like you're saying, I do agree, it's still a staple among Apple and their community as well. So that would probably be a good way to go about doing it, is to actually combine it and actually integrate the learning machine and AI into Siri and help it be more advanced. It just kind of depends on if that's the route they want to take and how much work will actually go into developing that versus just starting from the ground up and having an Apple GPT take over. So
exactly.
I don't really, and that's the other thing that you could actually do is if you did start from the ground up, you could always mask it to where all it needed to do was, have Hey Siri at the top, because that's really just the face of it.
Correct.
So it just,
because what are you going to do when, Apple gets rid of Siri? What are they going to name it? Something like a one letter thing, It just like, it'd be weird to get rid of it. And I agree with you kind of, that Google is ahead of that in terms of being a better assistant.
Yes, definitely.
But again, it's like most people, I don't think almost all people know like Siri generally.
Yeah.
And it's...
Team Rally is a freeware racing game developed by brothers Hino and Jukka Rorbinor from Finland. Do you want me to keep reading?
Shut up.
Okay.
That was ironic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's just how advanced she is. Well, it's kind of funny though, because it was ironically the other day, I took my daughter out for just a daddy-daughter outing, and we went to get some ice cream and stuff. So we're in the car, and somehow we got on the topic of Siri, and she's like, well, Siri just stinks. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting that like an 11-year-old would actually think that. She's like, yeah, I just like, sometimes it says like, I can't help you with that or something like that. And she's like, yeah, I think Google's a lot better. I'm like, wow. Pretty astute from, a kid that just hangs out with her friends and stuff. And I mean, it's not like, I don't really feel like she's like super tech savvy. So I don't think she's the typical Gen A type, but
should get her on one of these episodes.
I thought, I just thought that was like a little bit of an eye opener. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I myself appreciate about Google, because it has a lot of just day-to-day helpful use that you can just plug and go and be on your way. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with AI, at least on the forefront between Microsoft and Apple. I think according to Bloomberg, it sounded like they would probably make some sort of announcement or something on the public side next year in 2024 relating to this in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So we'll kind of have to wait and see. I'm not sure exactly what that specifically entails, but it's still a ways off, so that's kind of to be expected. But
yeah, for sure.
Moving on to nothing, though. We had a bit of a quarter 2 recap from Carl Pei and the company on YouTube, and evidently we're getting a sub-brand from nothing. And I'm kind of curious what your take is on this. It's supposed to be more so for the lower end consumer market. So
yeah.
I guess my biggest question is like, do you feel like it's too soon? I mean, they're just starting to get things rolling, especially here in the US. I know it's their second year technically, but I don't know. I'm kind of curious.
Well, we know that when Pei was with OnePlus, he did start a sub-brand, but I don't know at what point in that career did he start it. Was it like a few years into it, or because it was Nord? So,
well, I didn't think that was actually technically a sub brand. I think that was more of a model line. Was it actually listed as a sub brand?
Yeah, it is a sub brand.
Okay.
It's because it's actually says on The Verge, the article. Pei has a history of launching affordable sub brands within existing tech companies. One of his last major projects he worked on while still at OnePlus was kickstarting its Nord sub brand.
Yeah, I guess it just kind of depends. I mean, It's because I feel like, in my opinion, I felt like that was more of a model line.
Okay.
I guess technically, if you look at I'm sure maybe Wikipedia has it as a, a subsidiary or something like that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's kind of how I viewed it. They just kind of decided to announce, some lower end models. Kind of, in my opinion, I saw the Nord as like an iPhone SE. That's my perception of it. Now, when it comes down to the actual corporate, how you mix that all together and divvy it all up, how does that look? I'm not really sure. So maybe there's some truth to that. I can kind of see where you're coming from. So yeah, and I actually think that him having a history with a previous company, so maybe that will lend some more confidence to it and be like, okay, I think we're in a good position. And I don't necessarily think Carl would pursue something unless he knew it was capable of standing on its own without damaging the current structure of what he's built so far.
Yes, I would agree with you. Yeah, I do have those expectations of him just based on his history. And it looks like Nord was actually released in 2020. So that was 7 years after OnePlus began, which is quite a while to start a sub-brand, which is a good amount of time, I think.
Yeah.
So for Carl to go ahead and do this now, I think it is a little bit early, even though he does have experience, and I'm not discrediting that. He did do that sub-brand for Nord, and that shows that he's capable, like we said, but I don't know. I feel like, here's what I think. You refine nothing a bit more, work on the earbuds a little bit more, then make a sub-brand because you already have experience and knowledge of what a high expectation is versus something that's mid-tier that people can actually afford a little more easily. So I'd give it, if I was Carl, which I'm not, I would say maybe wait another year or two and then go ahead and do it. In the rare case that he actually might be able to pull this off, it's possible. I'm just saying from a face value, I feel like it just needs a little bit more time. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. So
when did it say that the Nord series started? You said 2020? Did it say
July of 2020? July, yeah.
Okay, which is ironic because he left in October of 2020. So
yeah, maybe that's a telltale sign of something. Maybe he just felt like he needed to just restart because he had so much on him. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see the sub brand is was it CMF? So
yeah. Yep.
Evidently, they're supposed to have a smartwatch and some earbuds coming here later on. I think he said this year, if I'm not mistaken, or at least an announcement of some sort. So I think I'm more interested to see the smartwatch myself.
Right.
Because I've already tested out the Nothing Ear 2s, and I wasn't really wholly impressed by that. So I think they really need to work on the audio side of things before they keep going in that direction, expanding. But as far as the smartwatch, yeah, that'd be something really cool to see. Obviously, I'm sure it's going to be well integrated with the Nothing OS, which I'm also a huge fan of.
Right. Yeah, I am pretty big fan of that too.
With basically any non-Apple wearable out there, it means that you can pretty much pair it to virtually any Android phone. So that's the cool thing is you could be able to test it out without actually having to buy a Nothing phone in theory. So that's the plus side. But yeah, I'm curious about prices, capabilities, performance. Obviously, it wasn't directly geared towards performance. That's what the Nothing brand is for. CMF is more towards, affordability and such. So, but it'll be really cool. I'm really glad to see that he's doing this. I just kind of felt like it was a bit of a shock because the guy is I feel like he's stretching himself thin. I mean, it's amazing how much he does in running this company.
Yes.
And then at the same time being such a face of the company as well, on YouTube and such. And just, it's incredible
he does
what
a lot.
He's doing. And yet at the same time, as we've mentioned before, he's very down to earth too. So it's like, who is this person? So
yeah, I feel like he's the type of guy that takes himself very seriously, but he also shows a side to him to tell people like, hey, I understand you from a user perspective because I've been there.
Yeah.
And when you show that kind of side to someone, it's like you're ensuring a bit of trust. And I feel like that's maybe what Carl's been doing the last few years, is trying to establish that. Now, as to how he's going to go about the next few years, that's kind of hard to tell. I mean, just from what he's done, I have a lot of faith that he's going to be able to really pull a lot of great things off. I also think the Nothing Buds 2, I feel like that would be something part of CMF.
Yes.
Just because of like the audio that you were mentioning, I feel like that is more of a worthy price to be that. So
yeah, $150. I think that's at the top right there of the price you'd pay for a lower end consumer market. So
yep.
Yeah, something between what we see from OnePlus, like maybe 50 to 60, all the way up to, I don't know, 125.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, So and it's kind of funny because I really don't. When I look at him, I don't think like Carl. He doesn't look like a Carl to me. Not to say anything about his nationality. It's just
right.
There's gotta be. I guess that just splits the difference and shows you just where the down to earth part comes from. Hey, it's Carl. So anyway, you had some news on Reddit. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we talked about a month ago, and I actually think it was on our STT stuff for Wednesday, about Reddit shutting raising the prices for API usage.
Yep.
And because of that, it was foreseen that a lot of those third-party Reddit apps were going to be shut down. Well, they are now. Apps like Sync and Bacon Reader are just completely gone. There was a farewell message, the developer of Sync, and that kind of stuff. The one of the ones that are still existing is Apollo. Christian Selig, which I think we actually mentioned him in the last episode that we talked about this whole Reddit debacle. He said that he'd be paying upwards of $20 million a year.
Yeah, that's right.
But he is going to be doing a subscription-based thing for this app, so at least he can make back what he would have owed on all of that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this whole thing is just ridiculous, honestly, because it's put a dent into those apps and, into the way that users utilize that stuff, according to Reddit. And I have never really used those apps, so I don't really know exactly, but it's still annoying that you have to increase the price so much for that to happen. And that's why there was that whole subreddits going dark, just because people were protesting that it's ridiculous. And I'm still kind of saddened by it, honestly. But
yeah, I mean, it's something that we weren't really going to be surprised by, because we knew that either prices were going to appear or increase on that third party level, or those services or product were just going to disappear because those who were heading it up just couldn't afford or see it worth charging for, just because of what they were offering and what the consumer was used to. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to say about that. I mean,
that CEO.
It's just, you can't get away from the unfortunate side of it all, and kind of what was avoidable, or at least finding a different way to approach it, as we've said in the past. So is that the only one? You said Apollo. I'm assuming there's probably other ones that are maybe a little bit less well known that are probably floating around still. So
yeah, there's still a few others that haven't shut down, thankfully.
Yeah.
But I really honestly think there was not a whole lot of thought put into this decision. I truly believe that, because if you wanted to raise prices, good. But if you're going to do it to the point of actually people protesting that, and rightfully so, then that's where the issue lies. And the way the CEO responded, I'm still absolutely frustrated by that. Seriously. I mean, he did not care. Just went straight right through it. And there are people that aren't even using Reddit anymore because of it. They've just left it because it's like, well, you've done this now, and I'm not going to support a CEO that pulls crap like that, And I can understand that. It's really, really annoying.
It's kind of crazy. I feel like 2023 is a great demise in social media platforms.
Yes.
It's just all over the place. I mean, not that Facebook was ever amazing, in the past few years. Obviously, I think they started going off the deep end, in the early 2010s. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, with Twitter, I'll say Twitter for the people that aren't used to the X part. But
agreed.
With Twitter, and then you have Reddit, Threads is and Mastodon and whatever. Those are more of experimental, and who's to say whether they're going to do any better or not. Yep. Obviously, like we said on Wednesday, they've kind of leveled out with active users. So, but it's just really crazy. I didn't really anticipate all this being that insane.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's what happens when stupidity interplays.
Honestly, the only, and maybe I'm wrong about this, so don't quote me on it, but I believe the only streaming service that has increased their prices is Discovery. They're charging like $10 for, because I used it for a little while. I mean, the plans start at like $4.99 a month and then go up to $10 with no ads. And they never even changed the prices for that. That's like one of the only ones that hasn't changed, which is great because like there are a lot of shows on there that I still love to watch. But yeah, aside from all, there's just tons of stuff that's happened this year, man. And there's still like how many more months? Like 5 more months, or no, 4. Well, including this month, that's 5.
We're in 8, so we're technically 5 since this one.
So there's still a lot of crazy stuff to happen, probably.
A lot of time for more screw-ups to appear, so you can definitely stay tuned for more interesting, controversial insanity.
Yep.
But speaking of controversial and polarizing, we don't normally spread our wings too far as when automotive industry is considered, or even technically sports, although we have incorporated some sports topics in the past. But the new design for the Santa Fe was released back, I believe it was in July. And this is just so insane, the way this vehicle looks.
Yeah.
And if you guys have seen the previous gen Santa Fe, there's nothing that resembles the outgoing generation at all. Yeah, you couldn't, if you were on the street and you saw the car driving by, you'd probably think it was more of like a Land Rover, like a Discovery.
Yes.
It's just absolutely not Hyundai.
Yeah, it definitely is not like them at all. Just from obviously the exterior is like something that just completely like takes you back. Immediately when looking at it, it almost looks like if you combined one of those basic police cars, like the SUVs,
Ford Explorer.
Yeah, I think that's what the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah, if you combine a Ford Explorer and then the Cybertruck from Tesla.
Okay, I can kind of see where you're going with that. Yeah,
it also has that kind of Kia Soul-esque to it.
That's exactly what I said. So I said it was a combination of a Kia Soul, a Discovery, and then the back end reminded me of a Ford Flex.
A new Ford Flex?
I mean, you could pick any Ford Flex. They all look practically the same.
Oh, yeah.
They're very distinctive.
Okay. Yep. Yes.
So there's that. And then, so there were 2 different pre-gen looks to the Santa Fe. One was the introductory, and that kind of had more of a swoopy, curvy grill to it. And I thought it was very, eye appealing. The facelift looked like a big fat mouth just coming right at you. And I was like, okay, that's not exactly what I would consider attractive. And even my wife and I were like, why? Like, as far like the interior looked amazing. If I could have the newer interior with the older exterior, I would buy that in a heartbeat. Except for the fact that it's still Hyundai. But nevertheless, it was just when you look at the next gen and the 2024, I'm just like blown away. I'm like, what on earth were they thinking? And I can see where they were pulling in some of their EV design.
Yes, I immediately thought of that.
The headlights. So I can see that. But it's just like, did you have to incorporate that into your regular, internal combustion engine lineup? So, which I suppose just indicates just how the transition to EV is coming along, because obviously I feel like you're going to have very few ICEs in the future. So
one of the things that you told me was that a car has generations.
Yeah.
And they will differ, not largely, but like it's close, but you can definitely tell the difference. And for each model is basically the same in the last maybe 8 years or so. I think hybrid is an exception because, especially even if it's a full-on EV, but if you're transitioning into that, then it's definitely going to be a very different look because you're putting that stamp on it. At least,
I mean, I think technically you could say like the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles might have a different look to them. Technically, the hybrids may not vary too much, but yes, definitely once you jump into the EV, that's really where things start to look more, well, I would say they attempt to make it look more futuristic.
Yes.
I don't think they always succeed at that, though.
Yes. Well, it's an indication.
Sometimes it looks more like child's toy.
Right. I mean, there was like, what was the one? Because you and I went to some different lots to check out some cars. There was was it a Kia EV?
It was probably a Kia EV, yeah.
Yeah, those ones, like you can tell immediately what an EV looks like now.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, I feel like Hyundai, at least with the Santa Fe here, it's just... Like, it doesn't look horrible, but...
It doesn't look like a family car. It looks like you're about to blow somebody over.
It looks like...
This looks like something that should have been in like a Marvel movie.
Yes. Yes. I was just going to say that. It should have been like in a Marvel movie where there's like a full-on chasing with 10 of these behind someone.
Yeah. But you're right. I can actually see like, red and blue lights flashing, on the inside from... Yeah, I can totally see that. Yep.
Yeah. And it like you said, it differs from the previous generation. And I feel like it differs too much. You could have
like
still...
when you look at that, you can't tell that that's a Santa Fe. And I'm not saying that when you look at a brand new RAV4, you can say, oh, I can see a 1998 RAV4 from that. No, not really.
Right.
It's just...
yeah, there's a huge difference.
I don't know. I feel like it just went way too far and differed way too far. This looks like a whole different model lineup. That's what I think.
Exactly. I feel like they should have kept that curvature they did on the previous generations. Lighten up that smile or something. Pull a
There's
Joker.
No smile there.
No, it's just a straight.
Exactly. It's staring you down.
It's not happy to be the way it is. Again, I'm not hating on this car. I mean, this is my first time seeing it too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's horrible. It's just that I wouldn't necessarily think of it as a family car. Like when I look at like a Honda Pilot, I think, okay, that's a family hauler. Or when I look at a Highlander, that's a nice car. When I look at this, I'm a little... This
is for an FBI investigator.
Yeah, it's like if I saw that thing coming at me in the rearview mirror, I was like, okay, I need to either slow down or get out of the way. So,
pull over.
But in either case, you'll definitely have to let us know. We'll throw a voting poll in Spotify, and you guys can let us know if you like that or if it's a definite no for you as far as the design. So,
yep.
But to close out this week's episode of Debatable. Again, this is kind of a very wacky episode. I was just informed via ESPN that Oregon and Washington have finalized a deal to join the Big Ten, which means they're leaving the Pac-12. So this is extremely surprising for me in some ways, and in other ways, I'm not completely shocked. But I'm a little nervous for myself here because as a diehard Duck fan, I think we're going to get swamped and just bullied around by some of these teams in the Big Ten. Michigan, Ohio State, probably Penn State, Purdue. So there's just a whole bunch of teams out there that are probably going to give us a thwomping when it comes to our 2024 season. But just something quick to announce out there. And actually, I think they've expanded it now. So real quick. So you have Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, and Arizona all joining the Big 12. And then Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA are now part of the Big 10. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy what's going on as far as the NCAA, but it's going to be an interesting outlook when it comes to 2024. So obviously this will be the last year that the Pac-12 has, they're fully integrated with all the teams that have already been there. But I'm sure you probably don't have a lot to say this because you don't really follow college that much, but
I haven't really kept up with those two specifically. I have kept up with Michigan. Yeah. Last year I did. Yeah. And there was another one you mentioned.
Let's see. There's Penn State. There's Ohio State.
Ohio State. That was the other one. Yeah, because those are one of the two big ones right there. And I feel like they probably shouldn't be doing that, because if you're staying in those, what did you say, the 12?
The Pac-12.
The Pac-12, because that's kind of where they're most comfortable. Unless they see like maybe this year they're able to actually do well, like if they can already see it, good. But if they're overstepping it a bit too much, then no, that's a really bad decision.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it just came down to what the Pac-12 was able to achieve and the negotiations and such, and so it just did not feel, it was enough to stay in the Pac-12, so they just left. And I believe, let's see, Utah and Arizona State were already approved to switch the conferences, so they're already in. Okay. I think Oregon and Washington are waiting the voting. But from what it sounded like, it was going to be unanimous vote anyway, so they're probably as good as in as well. So it's just really going to be crazy because for people who do watch college football, the Pac-12 has always been known as sort of a flashy, quick, but not really a true threat to the NCAA. And that's in my opinion as well, because I just kind of feel like they've never really been the true threat that I feel like they could have always been. Mm-hmm. So when you throw those teams into the Big Ten and the Big 12, that is going to be insane. Big 12 is definitely quick and flashy, but I feel like they can definitely bring it. And then you got the Big Ten, who are just they're a very powerhouse type of teams in there. Michigan, really hard running. Ohio State, very, very strong threat there. Of course, always the big dogs are going to be in the SEC with, Georgia, Florida, Alabama.
Right.
But it's definitely going to kind of change the shape of the NCAA for next year, but it'll be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, this has nothing to do with tech, but it was just something worth closing out the episode with because, it's debatable, and we kind of stretch the lines on this show just because it kind of is a broader term, so versus an actual tech talk on our Wednesday show. So, but we will definitely be back here on Wednesday with some more tech news. I've already got a pretty crazy intro that's a bit alarming, but definitely stay tuned for that. And with that said, this is JD and Riley, and we will catch you guys in the next one.
Peace out.